I discovered ballet, and it was literally like somebody turned on a light in my life. And it came from watching a girl doing ballet in the playground. I was about 10. I remember saying to her, why do you do that? It's ever so sissy. And she said, well, if you think it's sissy, come and try it. And the gauntlet was down. I've met incredible people. I've been in incredible shows. I've had children and brought them up and have a wonderful relationship with them. I've been a very lucky girl. My first love is stage, without a doubt. I went into, it was a reality program over here called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where you go into the jungle in Australia. But the year I did it was COVID. So we were in a cold castle in Wales, and you get limited food. You have to earn your food. You have to do the most revolting trials. Getting pummeled with fish guts.
A little birdie told me about an hour ago that they got a new role coming up. Tell us about that.
I have been asked to go into Cabaret in London to play Fräulein Schneider. And that was weird. I went into the meeting with Rebecca Frecknell, and I was so nervous. I said, I am such a huge fan of yours. We were chatting. I said, how did you get into directing? Because she's so good at it. She said, I wanted to be you. It wouldn't even occur to me that a director would be a fan. We all affect people's lives. We just don't know how.
I've seen so many miraculous things happen because there was a moment of connection that reactivated the brain to say, I want that.
The care homes lost so many people. I was a year trying to get in and see my mother. I was waving to her from a window, and it was so obvious to me that she was dying. And they said she could have an infection or, and I said, is she in any pain? And they said, no. And I said, do you think she's dying? And they said, yes. And we stayed with her until she died, which was a few hours later. And I'm still trying to campaign for Gloria's law that nobody has to be on their own again, ever, in any situation. It is cruel beyond. Keir Starmer backed it. So when he got in, it was kind of like, yes, we're going to get on the manifesto, or he's going to pass it. And then he decided to not back it. Even after sending us a letter saying, you will have my full support and we will get this done.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to Born SuperHuman. Now, I got a very special guest on today that I couldn't be more proud to host. And it's a little tough because I'm going to reveal Ruthie and I have been friends for many, many years since we went to theatre school at Lane Theatre Arts. But we're going to have a very open, revealing conversation that's going to be enlightening and soul discovering. So for those of you that have seen Ruthie many times, you're going to get something new. Those that don't yet know Ruthie, maybe over in America, you're going to find out so much about an incredible performer, but even more an incredible lady. Ruthie, welcome to Born SuperHuman.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's a joy to see you.
It's been a few years, let's just put it that way. Although I did see you last year, which was beautiful to see. But before that, it's probably been, well, for me about 30 years, but for you about 5 years because you haven't aged at all.
I love you for that. It's amazing what Vaseline on the lens can do.
Hang on, let me get the Vaseline. So before we get started, though, really into the conversation, Ruthie, I want you to go back and tell us when you were a young girl, tell us a little bit about what was your dream? Was musical theatre or performing always in your vision? And what was that life-changing moment that really propelled you?
Well, it was always in my vision, I suppose. But the first time it really, the light went on when I discovered ballet, and it was literally like somebody turned on a light in my life. And it came from watching a girl doing ballet in the playground. I was about 10, and I was such a tomboy. And I remember saying to her, why do you do that? It's ever so sissy. And she said, well, if you think it's sissy, come and try it. And the gauntlet was down. And I think I'd said that to her because I loved watching her. But I didn't feel I could say, what are you doing? Because I was one of the boys and I played football with the boys. Yes. Uh, and as I said, I started, and what I realized was that suddenly I discovered a place where I could use all the fear and the hurt and the joy and the all those different sides of me, because my childhood was quite turbulent. And I had no outlet for this turbulence and this fear. And the one thing that was always said to me in dance classes was, you have so much feeling. I had bugger all talent. I mean, bugger all, what do you call it? I was didn't I wasn't loose, I wasn't I had no turnout, all of those things. And every exam I took in ballet was lovely feeling, needs more work on technique. But this ballet teacher really got the feeling that I had. I could, and I had the most amazing feet as well. I used to break in people's point shoes for them. So, uh, and she was the one who said to me, I said, I want to be a ballerina. And she said, I'm going to be really honest with you, Ruthie. She said, you don't have the physique to be a ballet dancer. She said, and I think it would be far too constricting for you. She said, you've got far more to give. I think you ought to go to a college that does all sorts of different dancing. And that was when I picked Lane Theatre Arts, which didn't even have a musical theatre course then. It was just dance. But I walked into that studio and I watched a couple of classes and I thought, yeah, this is where I want to come. So I didn't even bother auditioning anywhere else. But that's me all over. I've always seemed to, I never have a plan B, and I never have. And it's sort of, no, that's what I want. That's what I want. And it doesn't, and back then it never occurred to me that I wouldn't get it. It never occurred to me. I said to Cameron McIntosh's office, I was in Cats, and Howard Harrison was the guy who you negotiated your contracts with. And they wanted me to stay on for a longer period of time and extend my contract. And he takes great glee in telling me now that apparently I said, oh no, I'm going to be a star. So I have to keep moving on. It's like, where did that come from, that drive, and where did it go? And I say go because I sort of was in the abyss for a while of lack of confidence. And also, I think that we're in a business where it's imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And the older I got, the more that kicked in. And it was only recently that I thought, I've got to try and reclaim that girl, that part of that girl that thought, sod it, why not? And so yeah, that was kind of my journey into it.
Yeah, I love it. Look, again, I know a little bit more I should say, about you and our experiences, because I went to Lane Theatre Arts, which was an incredible experience and opportunity for anyone that goes there. But going back now, we have names for children growing up. We call it trauma or abuse or those different type of things. When I was growing up, it was just growing up.
Yeah.
When you look back on it, there was no name. It was just our life, but it brought a resilience to us. When you look back on it now, do you see that as a blessing or do you see it as a curse? Because obviously great things came from it. And what would you do different as Ruthie, the young girl, if you could talk to your parents and say, I need this?
Um, I don't, I, I'm sort of stuck in the middle with this because I do think my childhood made me very determined. Um, and there was something about being toughened up in that way that has allowed me to bulldoze my way through life. The other side of it is that it has left me, um, if I'm really, really honest, I think there's some wiring goes on when you're little. And as I've got older, I know that that wiring is still there, but I've got a few more tools to deal with it. And it's like I- I've had to learn how to put in the positive and take the voice out of my head because I learned such a huge lesson. I went into it was a reality program over here called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where you go into the jungle in Australia. But the year I did it was COVID. So we were in a cold castle in Wales, and you get limited food. You have to earn your food. You have to do the most revolting trials, getting pummeled with fish guts, all sorts of things. I thought it was a good idea at the time. And I did meet 11 people that I adore now. And it was such an experience in learning how tough you are. But what I discovered was how loud my head was and how cruel my head could be because you have absolutely uh, you have no devices whatsoever. Mine were taken off me 9 days before we went into the castle so that you can't see what's going on out there. You can't see the news. They announce it. They take the devices off you before they announce it. And so you have no distractions whatsoever in there. There's 1 hour a day that you're doing something, and maybe that's a trial. And I suddenly realized how loud and how cruel my head was. I could not see my value. Um, I could see everybody else's value, but I could not see my own. And it was a real eye opener to me. It made me start writing a book called Finding My Voice. I don't know what it's going to be called now. It's sort of morphing because I felt twofold. I'd lost my voice, singing voice as I knew it when my sister Noel committed suicide. It was like it went straight to my voice and everything locked. And I kept singing on it and not getting help, just muscling through, doing what I normally do, which is muscle through everything. And my voice as I knew it, I didn't have it. And I didn't enjoy singing. It was sad to sing, and it was just an effort. Um, and also, I realized that uh, I wasn't very good at speaking up for myself, that it was all about the other person. And that's what I'd done as a child. I just kept stum. Um, because of all the craziness that was going on in my family, um, you didn't get angry. You just shut your mouth, because if you tried to interfere, uh, it wasn't it wasn't listened to. I'll preface that by saying my mother was quite depressed. Um, she was an interesting character. She was very charismatic, but as she got older, more and more negative, more and more angry. She talked about committing suicide all the time. Um, and so I was terrified of that, uh, constantly. And in my family, people do it. You know, all of my sisters tried. Noel tried many times and eventually got there. So uh, I had swallowed every bit. I don't like confrontation still. And speaking up for myself became harder and harder. And so this idea of a book came about because I felt like I had no voice and I was saying things in this reality program that I didn't want to share, but I felt like I had no value without sharing these certain things that I knew people wanted to know. Um, and yeah, so it was, my parents, my mother was an alcoholic, my father, they both drank. They both had a very turbulent relationship, very lots and lots of fights, lots and lots of damage to each other, lots and lots of police called. And I was scared all my childhood. I was so scared. And I think that I mean, I can't have loud noise. Loud noise instantly scares me. I can't, if my girls, um, and they were when they were teenagers, they're now 20 and 22, but when they were teenagers and going through those angst years and their father kind of abandoned them and that kind of thing, and there was lots going on there. And a couple of times well, every time they had some kind of angst, I felt paralyzed. But especially if they said, I don't want to be here, Mum. Because in my world, people do commit suicide. So it I found motherhood quite painful. I love them more than anything. I would take the bullet for them. I would, and what we have now is exceptional. But I found it very painful because I was on my own. You've got nobody to hand them off to say, I need 10 minutes. When things happen, you've got nobody to discuss it with and say in the moment, what do I say? What do I do? Do I discipline or do I hold them or do I? So I found it, a lot of it very painful, and that's a hard thing for a mother to admit. Um, I wouldn't, I wouldn't lose them for the world. They are the best thing that ever happened to me. Um, but because of my childhood, I think what it is I'm in fight or flight all the time, um, or freeze. Uh, and I walked out of the castle and I thought, oh my goodness, there's three things that are running constantly for me. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? What have I done wrong? One of those things fits everything. And so in any situation, they are running. Um, I will always blame myself first. Should I have done? All of this. And so, yeah, it's for somebody who loves to make people laugh and does make people laugh and loves to entertain and feels alive on a stage. Um, I am an isolator and I am not very good at joining in unless I'm made to, because the energy it takes is enormous. It's odd.
First of all, I want to thank you for being so open to sharing because it's a classic example of we have an impression looking from the outside in of life must be amazing, it's incredible, you're living a life that so many people dream of. I remember when I got, you know, when I was doing Starlight Express, and I thought if I got Greaseball, I'd be happy the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And the joy lasts 15 seconds. And then it's like, what's next? And I think you revealing this is actually so empowering because I know more people, or I'm sure there's more people as well out there that are suffering with a facade that they also love. I know you love being on stage.
Love it.
There's no doubt. And yet, when the curtain comes down, we're still human. We're still going through everyday life. Going back to your mother a little bit, because I know she played a major impact on during COVID onto the pain you were feeling and the anger that came out to the way people were being treated. But we'll touch on that a little later. At what point did you turn around during your childhood and develop a relationship with your mum that then was revealed later on? Were you always close to her? Because fear has a double-sided impact as a child.
No. Well, I just wanted to make my mother happy. She was so unhappy that my mission in life was to make her happy. And I was close to her. Uh, but she could be quite cruel as well. So it was sort of, on one hand, she could be so kind, or so good to me, and on the other hand, it was just like a slap. Um, but what happened was a great healing, Dan, because my mother got dementia, and when she got dementia, just before, for years she hadn't got out of her dressing gown. Um, she would go and pick my children up from school if I desperately needed her to. She would be really peeved with me that she had to go and do it. She'd go and do it, and she'd turn up in driving gloves, sunglasses, and a house coat. And they would be mortified. Um, she was so negative in the end. She was very difficult to be around, very difficult. I loved her, but she was a difficult woman. And she got dementia. And one of the things that I felt guilty about, first of all, was I thought she was just drinking when the sort of slurring came, when she was falling over, forgetting things. I just assumed that she was drinking and didn't have any sympathy for that, not realizing it was the starts of dementia because that had been she'd been drinking all her life. So, and those were the symptoms that happened when she was drinking. So, anyway, when she did finally sort of understand, and we all understood that she had dementia, it was like my mother wore all the disappointments of her life like clothes. She just kept putting them on and she couldn't take them off. So that when she got dementia, there was 6 months where my mother was the person that God intended her to be. All the anger dropped away, the alcoholism dropped away, the negativity dropped away. She was the mother I always wanted. Um, and then my mother's dementia turned into her being a honey. She'd been this difficult woman all her life, and she turned into a honey. And she loved my father. They kissed and cuddled again, which I don't remember. I saw once. I remember my parents, when I was little, walking down a hill and they were holding hands. And I remember the joy I felt as a little kid thinking, "Oh, they're holding hands." And so they, my dad ended up calling her my girl again, and she just wanted to be with him. I would say I'd try and make her laugh about things she'd done in the past, and she would say, "Why are you laughing at that? That's awful. I'm really sorry." So there was this unbelievable change to her in the last 6 years of her life. And so I don't know if you want me to go on with
Sure, please do.
COVID.
Yeah,
So,
there's points that now, yeah.
I mean, she ended up having to go into a home because my father couldn't look after her. She had uh, a Lewy body's dementia, which comes from Parkinson's. So she was constantly falling over, constantly in hospital with chunks out of her head and, just black eyes. And they said she needs 24/7 care. I mean, we had to get her a helmet to wear constantly because she was falling over so much. So she went into this home, which she hated, first of all, would cry like a baby, would ask for her mum because she didn't realize she was dead. Because dementia, it's like if you imagine a bookcase and the latest memories are on the top shelf and the oldest memories are on the bottom shelf. And it's like they fall off in shelves. And so they forget the top shelf, then the next shelf, then the next shelf. And they are of their life, and they are then left with, their little again. I mean, she thought, I mean, she would say things like, "We'd be out," because she loved to go out from the home. And she would stand there and go, she just had no filter. "Why would you wear a dress like that with spots with an arse like that? That's far too big for spots." And the person would be able to hear. But she just became a darling. And then COVID hit, and we we lost my father 2 weeks into COVID, 2 weeks into lockdown. Um, and it was the last proper conversation I had with my mother. We told her about dad, and she was completely compos mentis. It was like she said, "Well, he was suffering, wasn't he? Because he had heart and kidney problems, and we knew he was going to go. Um, but he went downhill so quickly. So And he said, "All I want you to do," in his will was, "I just want you to keep looking after mum." And of course, we all did. But they shut down the care homes and they wouldn't let us in. And we understood, first of all, when we realized that there was no vaccine, there was no testing, first of all, we had to keep them safe because the hospitals sent home all the old people back to their homes and not testing them or not knowing they had COVID before they went. And the care homes lost so many people. But I was a year trying to get in and see my mother. I was waving to her from a window, and she was walking, talking, eating, drinking, all of that before lockdown. Then she was 24/7 in her room. And after 4 months, she wasn't walking, she wasn't talking. She had to have her food mushed up and her drinks thickened, um, so she didn't choke on them. Uh, she was in a chair 24/7 because she couldn't move anymore. Um, and I was watching, and my sisters were all watching this through the care home window. They would not let us in. They would not let us in. They would not let us in. And I started to be really vocal about it on the television and on radio, saying, these people are dying of loneliness. You can't take people who are in care, including children, including people in hospital, they were dying on their own. And carers were able to come and go round Asda, and their husbands came home from work or their children came home from school or whatever it was, and we still weren't allowed in. So I fought and fought and joined up with Rights for Residents, and I got all the down low, and all that was happening was the government were giving guidance. They weren't making rules or laws. So the care homes then became, it was a postcode lottery as to whether you were allowed in or not, and mine wouldn't. So the government eventually said, our guidance is that the homes should, you can nominate one essential caregiver, and that person can come and go as they please, as long as they are tested before they go in, because by then we had a test, it was a year later, and the vaccine. They still wouldn't let us in, even when they'd been vaccinated, and we had. So I applied for that, and because I was being very vocal on television and radio, they let me in as an essential caregiver. And the day that I got in, she still remembered my name. She just about say Ruthie. And I put my arms around her, and she just kept moaning. "Oh, oh," because she hadn't been held in a year. Can you imagine not being loved or held in a year? I mean, these carers are wonderful, some of them, most of them, but they don't know your parent like you do. They don't have the memories. And, anyway, she um, declined quite quickly. Um, and I got 5 weeks with her. My sisters weren't allowed in. But I got 5 weeks with her. And the day that she died, I went in because she hadn't looked great the day before. And I said, where's mum? They said, we put her to bed. She wasn't, she was quite tired. And I went in, and it was so obvious to me that she was dying. And I said, she's dying. She's not tired. And so they got the EMTs in, or EMS, whatever you call them over there. And they said she could have an infection, or, and I said, is she in any pain? And they said, no. And I said, do you think she's dying? And they said, yes. So I said, I'm not moving her anywhere. I said, she's staying here. I'm not putting her in a hospital where we can't be with her. And I snuck my two sisters in, and we stayed with her until she died, which was a few hours later. And I lay with her, and I lay with her after she died, and I forgave her everything. It had been easy to forgive because this beautiful woman had emerged later on. And it made me, and I'm still trying to campaign for Gloria's law and enshrine it in law, that nobody has to be on their own again, ever, in any situation. It is cruel beyond There were children who didn't see their parents. There were husbands and wives who'd been together for 70 years who weren't allowed to see each other. It was, and I wasn't allowed to take her out either. My sisters and I weren't allowed to even remove her from the home because what I didn't realize was I had power of attorney with my mother after my father died, but only over her finances. I didn't realize it didn't cover everything. It has to be a separate one for their well-being. So the home had the say over my mother's well-being, not us. So yeah, I'm still going. I'm still trying to fight and get that law passed because there will be another pandemic and there will be situations where, the homes will shut up shop because basically a care home is a money business. You don't, they're not there. It's not NHS or anything like that. It is a business. And if it's a business and it's about money, they're going to do what's best for them. And so, yeah, nobody should ever spend a year on their own in their room. It's cruel.
It's been shown, I really studied the brain, and it's shown what happens to a prisoner when they're put into isolation, solitary confinement, and the changes to the brain and the way that it messages is abuse. It is now you take that to someone that just wants to be helped. And I'm not saying it's okay for criminals either, but I'm saying in your mother's situation, here's someone that's completely isolated, that's
And vulnerable.
so vulnerable and no voice for themselves.
No voice.
And it's isolation is the worst. I love what you're doing, Ruthie, continuing this on. I've seen you working outside of Parliament and trying to get, how close have you got to actually impacting the change?
Uh, we got very close a couple of times, and then the government starts saying, "Oh, we've put this in place." I don't know why they're so opposed to it because it's got cross-party support and it's got support from all sorts of care places. Um, but there seems to be, we just keep coming up against the last one was Keir Starmer backed it. So when he got in, it was kind of like, yes, we're going to get on the manifesto or he's going to pass it. And then he decided to not back it. Even after sending us a letter saying, you will have my full support and we will get this done. So it's just, it takes a long time. This is what, 5 years later, and we're still trying. Um, if I can get this passed with rights for residents, then it will be the proudest I've ever been. Because, there was one lady with dementia who went into hospital, and she happened to have her daughter with her to have, no, she didn't. I'm sorry. She didn't. She went into hospital. Something was wrong with her wrist. She'd broken it and it wasn't mending. And the doctor sent her home saying, you've got dementia. What do you need your left hand for? So there was this going on. They were prioritizing. So as a celebrity over here, I feel that if you have some kind of visibility, you have to do something good with it because otherwise you've been given this privilege of being able to have a platform. And if you're not going to use it and you're just going to use it for yourself, then what good are you going to leave in the world?
Mhm. What could people do? I know people want to help often, or they've gone through an experience and don't know what to do. How could people listening to this actually? Because I'm telling you, Ruth, this isn't just the British problem. The same was happening in America. The same was
Well, I
happening.
hear the waiting lists are getting longer and longer over there, and that's private.
It's really taken a downturn because I think when people realize the control they can have through fear and from restriction, they continue to push it because it's a power play to control. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But what can people do? What would you suggest someone that says, I want to get behind Ruthie on this for England, or I want to enact something in another country or start a movement? How can they
Oh,
help you?
social media, of course, is huge. Even though I hate it, I hate having to do it. Um, it's not my thing. We grew up with, we didn't even have mobile phones, Dan, did we? So for me, it's a difficult one. But social media, you have to write to MPs. You have to actually pick up, you have to do something physically. And if you can follow Rights for Residents in England, then, we will update you on anything that we need your support on.
How do they
Um,
find that? How do they find rights for residents?
Instagram.
Okay.
No, Facebook, and it might be on Instagram as well. I think it is, but definitely Facebook. And I think you, if just if you know a few people who've been, it's amazing when you say it out loud and you say, my this happened to my mother, and this is why Rights for Residents got in touch with me, because I realized that my mother hadn't had a second vaccination, and we had the test and all of this. I noticed a few things. And so I put a post on Instagram, and I was inundated, and it really caught on. And that's when Rights for Residents got in contact with me. So it's finding a few people, excuse me, who are in your situation, and you just start with that little posse, and you'll be amazed at how things grow. Just start. If you don't start, then it can never become anything.
Yeah, I just pulled it up on, it's hard to see in here, but I just pulled it up. I'm joining the group right now. But thank you. So we'll continue to push that because again, this is about people. It's not about a movement. It's not about a um, trying to achieve anything except give somebody humanity in life. It's beautiful. I want
Well,
to ask,
let's just, sorry to interrupt you, darling, but let's just take Greta Thunberg for a start. That was one person, one child who completely brought, huge things to the foreground. One person.
and everything's possible when
Yeah.
especially when it's for the right reasons.
Yes.
Because when we've been so,
Inherently, people are good.
yeah, we're so numbed down and dumbed down because of what we've gone through, especially the last, 6, 8 years, really. We've seen a massive shift in the world and lack of community and isolation. That we know isolation forces us to put ourselves first. And there's nothing wrong with putting yourself first, but not as exclusive. Sometimes you got to take care of yourself, but it gives you the power to help more. I really miss community. I miss neighborhoods. I miss families because we were isolated and it becomes normal. We accept it. I've got to ask you,
9/11. Not on when it was 9/11. Sorry, I will explain.
no, no, go ahead.
On 9/11, just after I was in New York, and everybody was talking to everybody, and everybody was talking on the subway, and they were the sense of community. It was like it being in England after the war. Not that I was, but what my parents said. And then I went back 6 months later, and it had all gone back to it's all about me. It's a shame.
It's crazy because they say war is what brings people back together. It resets humanity because suddenly we're in so much need for help ourselves or giving help. That why does it take getting to war? Because we're seeing that now. The world is heading back to these constant fights or battles or wars of all different levels. What's it going to take to bring people back? We should learn from the past, but we know we don't. I've got to ask you this. You went from this little girl that was a tomboy onto stage using the tools that you were given emotionally to express so much from your childhood. What did your mum say when she saw you on stage, and what was her favorite performance or show that you did character?
Um, she lived through me because she was a frustrated performer. She came from a very poor family, so that wasn't an option for her. She ended up being a drama teacher. But so she lived through me. That was hard for my sisters. And it used to make me cringe because she'd start talking about me in front of them, and I would know how that would make them feel. So I would instantly try and shut it down. Um, so never felt that I could really celebrate it um, with my sisters. I mean, I said to my sister Noel once, I said, Have you ever resented my success? And she said, No. She said, I'm so proud of you. And then she paused and she said, But how come I know there were 7 pictures of you on the wall and only one of me? You know, that we sort of take it in. Um, But yes, my mother was, I mean, she loved it because there were opening nights. I was in the papers all the time. I was in the magazines. I was on television. Oh, that's my Ruthie, you know. Um, and so, and this is another thing about my mother. I went to New York because I got my green card and thought, right, that's next. And I was in New York and I wasn't working at this particular time. And I remember being on the phone and she said, Oh, I saw a program last night, she said, and there was this girl on it singing. And I thought, Oh, it used to be you. So there was this, it she uh, had a harder time than I did, or as hard a time as I did if I wasn't working. You know, she couldn't get the reflected glory
Did that
kind
bring you closer together, or did you find that it was kind of a double-edged sword? There was a certain, you helped her live the life that she dreamt she wanted to, but at the same time, it was more about that than about you.
Well, I have said this before when I was interviewed before, but you know, it was like the first 2 times I was nominated for an Olivier, and the first time I didn't get it, and she was fuming and was a real pain in the arse at the dinner afterwards, you know. Well, and the second time. She said to me on the way there, she said, If you don't get it, I'm not going to the dinner. I'm just not. And so when they called out my name and I won the Olivier, all I could hear was her saying, She got it, she got it. I was so relieved. I mean, my father had said, he'd written me a letter and said, Darling, it doesn't matter one way or another. He said, I will be seen wrestling the gun out of your mother's hand if you don't win. Um, but that kind of thing, I was always very conscious of it meant more to me if she was happy.
Fascinating. Look at your childhood and still into adulthood, it was still the same.
Yeah. 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 I just wanted her to be happy. And she couldn't be. And it, it it was so hard to be around that. Um, it was like she always had to make it about her. And if it wasn't about her, then she made it about her somehow. It's like my one of my friends once said, you know, we were messing around and he said, Okay, your best friend's got cancer. Make it about you. Um, just as a, you know, we were just messing around. And that was my mum. My father got cancer. And and my mother, when she got home from the hospital, she said, I was driving home and I thought, your father's got cancer. And I thought, oh my goodness, she cares. And she said, and I thought, who's going to defrost the fridge? That says it all to me. I
And
did love her, and there was wonderful parts to her, but she was just, you know, she was depressed. I think she had terrible postnatal depression. Um, she lost her first baby and it was 5.5 hours old. So she'd gone full term, all of that. And so, but in those days, therapy wasn't a thing.
mm,
You didn't go to therapy. And you certainly didn't if you were middle class. Oh no. It was a real taboo in England. I remember going to America and sitting on the tube, and these three guys were sitting there in their suits. They must have been lawyers or something. And they were all talking about their therapist. And I thought, they're talking about a therapist on the tube. That's really odd because we would never have done that in England. I mean, not it's different now, but you know, 20 odd years ago, 28 years ago, that we'd have never discussed it in England, would we?
I got to bring up this memory because you and I connected about 20 years ago. We hadn't seen each other obviously since I had left the West End and your career continued to blossom. But I was sitting in a casting office. I don't know if you remember this. And your name, I was working for Henderson Zuckerman, Kathy Henderson, Dory Zuckerman, who had cast Pretty Woman and a bunch of movies. And I was working with them. And your picture came across the desk and you were being represented. You were in New York. And I actually reached out to your agent who was representing and said, I'd love to get in contact with Ruthie. This is who I am. We went to Lane Theatre Arts together. We've done Cavalcade at Coward together, different little things and stuff. And we connected for 2 days. I don't know if you remember that, but it was
Do.
amazing. We were actually, I remember we were faxing each other.
Yes, yes, do you remember?
Yeah.
And they all fade, don't they?
Yeah. And then after 2 days, I think you went off to do something else. And then I was on to other things and we kind of lost contact for 20 years. But again, I remember when I was on stage, my mum would come to watch me. I'd be more nervous when my mum would come to watch me than anybody else. We had Princess Diana. You know, you've been
Mm.
involved with so many people, and yet my mum, did you have that same feeling when your mum came, that pressure that you had to be at the highest end of your game because it was your mum, or did it not really affect you?
Oh no, it did. Um, it did affect me because, but the thing is that my mother could be very direct, but she was very proud of me, and that I have to say that my mother and father coming to see me doing things and taking me out for dinner afterwards, and we used to have this lovely time, and I'm very grateful for that. I think it was definitely hard on my sisters because they didn't get the same. And I'm sorry for that. It's not that my parents didn't love them as much, but unfortunately, I was in a business that was right in your face and something that my mother loved. So, and I suppose my dad was a Fleet Street journalist and he loved music. So,
I remember my mum coming to watch me, and she would bring bird watching binoculars, not the little ones that you get in the theatre. You put the 20, or in the old days, you put 2 pence in and you pop open. She would sit in the front row with these big binoculars that would literally rest on the edge of the stage and watch me. It was like, again, it's a mother's pride. I think
yeah.
a little different, maybe reason wise, but yeah, I'd always get nervous. I want to go back to Lean Theatre Arts. Here you were stepping in to what was effectively not a ballet school, it was a dance school, but ballet had, a huge part in everybody's dance. If you couldn't do ballet, there were certain things you'd never have.
Yeah.
What was it like stepping in there? How advanced were you when you first went in? Because I know you're a star of that school. You were when I was there. I think you were in your third year when I came in into my first year. and you were the superstar. What was it like though when you first went in there?
Well, I had to work really hard at my dance because I was the thing about going into a college to train is that you are a big fish in a small pond in your village. And that's the other thing about social media nowadays is, you know, you we were in competition with a village. Everybody now is in competition with the world. It's right there, and it must be so hard for young people to see it all there and not think, "Oh, well, it's been done," or they're better than, or I need to, depends where you've come from. Um, but I was then a small fish in a big pond. But that has always made me push harder to be seen. I always wanted to be seen and heard because I definitely wasn't heard um, at home. So I wanted to be seen and heard. And I had this voice that just developed and it just got, I don't know, I don't know where it came from.
You said though, like, I want to jump in there because you said it was a dance school without musical theatre course in there. Did that evolve because of you?
I don't know. I think I think it was time for Betty Lane to do it, and she brought that in my third year. But she loved musicals, of course, so we sort of did. We skirted around it, and she loved singing, and I remember singing for her in my audition. And I also remember her pulling my leg up to the side at the ballet bar to see how loose I was, and my bottom leg came up to meet it. You know what I mean? Because I just wasn't that loose. Um, and really, she was she was good to me from the get-go. She could see that I had talent, and she just really pushed it. Um, this is the woman who used to, I don't know if she was still doing it. I love Betty Lane. For all, there are many people who would say, oh God, she used to say terrible things. And, it was a different era. But she used to hang potatoes outside the office. And if your name was on one, then it meant you had to lose weight. That kind of
Can
thing.
you imagine
Which
that nowadays?
you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. And it was devastating when you saw that because I was on there, at least twice because I worked at McDonald's and I got free meals.
I remember the first time you and I shared this with you before. I don't know whether you can remember. You got so many stories, but we were in the studio rehearsing for a number for the end of year summer show. I know you can put your hands over your face. We actually, I actually rented a cupboard under the stairs. You know, it was a crazy story, but that was to live in. But you were seeing a guy called Paul Johnson at the time, and we were doing a number, and here I was, relatively manly for a dancer, as far as I'm going to escort you onto stage while this beautiful booming voice goes out. We're in the middle of rehearsal, and I think Paul said something to you because he was in front of me. You turned round, Ruthie, to slap him. He ducked, and I got your full force of that right hand slap across my face. I think it's the first time you ever noticed me or ever knew me at that point. And I was stunned. And I remember you just looking at me, and I was like, I can't remember what happened. And I think there was such a character going on that it came across, well, I shouldn't have been there. It was my fault, which was awesome when I look back on it. And then we became friends after that, and that's where we really blossomed as a friendship. But you always had that power and that passion. And it wasn't I never saw it as a diva. Diva for me is someone that's uber talented, not an attitude. An attitude is a wannabe. But you were on such a mission, and I always know you had such high standards of perfection, and you
Yeah.
saw things most people didn't. How did that translate across into the professional world? Because I have a memory of you reaching out to me when you were doing a chorus line and you got to sing Kiss Today Goodbye. And I remember being at that performance for the first time because that wasn't your character, or that wasn't the song your
Oh.
character was meant to sing. How did that perfectionism affect you in the professional world?
Um, when I was younger, I know that there was a lot of, I think I've always been well liked by people because I don't like confrontation, but there was definitely a sense of, oh, she's ambitious. You know, a woman can't be ambitious, and she's really ambitious. But in actual fact, you know, as a leading lady, I feel that part of my job is to look after the company. I won't have any bad behavior in it. I'm sure I behaved badly when I was younger. I'm sure I did. The kind of thing that I know, one of the things I did was I nearly got fired from Cats because I understudied like six other parts, and my understudy had a bad something going on physically, a bad tear or something. And I waltzed up. I was fed up because it meant I couldn't go on for Grisabella. I couldn't go on for, Bomb Ballerina and all these other parts that were bigger than mine because I had to stay in my own part because she was my understudy. So I couldn't do any of those. And I went up into a physio room and said, could you tell me how long it's going to be, before she's well again? And quite rightly, the producers said, how dare you? How dare you? But it was those kind of things. I didn't see what was wrong with asking. I didn't see what was wrong with saying, I'm going to be a star. So no, I can't stay here. But as you get older, you learn. And for me, it is vitally important that my company is happy. And if there's any bad behavior, I will nip it in the bud and I will look after them and I will fight for them, because that I think is part of a leading lady and a leading man's job. Because if you behave badly, it gives permission for everybody else to do it and it filters through the company. Because I've been in companies, not very many, where there's been bad behavior, and I've been in the ensemble, and it makes for a very unhappy place to be.
How much of that do you think relays back to your own family? Because now, as a leading lady, leading man, that's matriarch, patriarch. Do you think because of your experience as a child, means even more to you? Because again, being in theatre, many people aren't there for everybody else, they're there for themselves.
I can't bear to see anybody in pain. I can't bear to see anybody upset. And I will instantly see, I walk in a room, and this is not me being conceited. This is what happens. I'll tell you what happens. I walk into a room and people instantly sort of, they call me a legend. Oh, it's the legend, or it's, and they're very respectful, and they, I get perks that the rest of the company don't get. The company manager gets me a car or something like that, that they wouldn't, the rest of the company wouldn't get. And they're so in awe of, this career that I've had and what have you, that I then spend the next 3 weeks pulling myself down in front of them and taking the mickey out of myself so that they understand that I feel that I might have done lots of stuff, but we're all human beings and nobody deserves more respect than anybody else if they are doing their job. The ensemble are the workhorses of any production, and they're always paid the worst and they're always treated the worst. And in England, we have this sort of hierarchy of movie actors, straight actors, TV, and musical theatre. Musical theatre is right down there. In America, musical theatre is, I mean, definitely the movie stars are up there, but the musical theatre is right up there. If you're in New York, you can get a table anywhere for, if you are in a show on Broadway. And it's not the same for everybody loves the musical, but it's not respected in the same way. People on Broadway, the ensemble are earning probably about 2 grand a week. And people over here are earning, on a tour, £500 to schlep round on tour in the ensemble. It's different for me. I negotiate my contract separately. And I've been very, very fortunate. But yeah, I want to look after them.
What would
I
your
just,
advice be then, Ruthie, to a young girl or boy that says maybe they've seen you on stage and go, that's what I want to do, and it awakens that passion? What would you tell them?
I would say, if this is the only thing you want to do, then great, go for it. And if the doors open, walk through them. If they don't, then you've got to figure out which is your door. But everybody, it's very difficult to tell somebody who's passionate about it to not try because you've got to, because you'll regret it otherwise. But if you want me to be honest, and I will be honest, you've got to eat, sleep, and breathe it because it is full of rejection. It is not very well paid. It is, COVID showed us all, didn't it, that it's still not considered a proper job, not in England. Because if you were in a show at the time of COVID, you got furloughed. If you weren't, you were on your own, kid. And this is a business, the arts brings in 9 billion a year and football brings in 7.5. So, there should be a little bit more respect for the arts, but they're just cutting it and cutting it and cutting it. The government, they're cutting this, that, and the other. I would say to them, get a side hustle. You have to have a side hustle. If you want a long career in this business, you better have something else that you can make money from because you could be working for 6 months, a year, and then you might not work for 6 months, a year. And it's not saying everybody needs a plan B. It's not a plan B, it's a side hustle.
Mm.
So go and learn photography and take headshots, go and learn videography. And, so you can do something else that, really goes alongside it. That's one of the things I do at this college is give them a side hustle because there's got to be. And you've got to love it. And if you if you want it to be a long career, and there are very few people who do stay the course, I'm sure from your year, but from my year, I'm the only one left doing it,
Mm.
actually performing. All the rest of my year, th- doing amazingly worthy things. They're teaching and, all sorts, but lots of people drop out. It's not an easy business to be in.
There's also a side, never take it for granted. Because when I was touring with Lloyd Webber, I thought it would always be there. I thought I could
Yeah.
just go from job to job and I could disappear for a while and come back in. And that's when I came to America. I'm going to go and be a movie star, do all the TV stuff. And then I remember reaching out to Jan Kennedy at Billy Marsh and Associates and saying, "Hey, I want to come back and do theater." She said, "Sorry, you've been gone too long." And you said you have this thing, but this is one thing that really exciting. First off, you talk about jobs, right? And how hard you can be out. A little birdie told me about an hour ago that they got a new role coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I am going in. I'll preface by saying there's a time for a woman where you feel like you're in the wilderness because you're getting older and you're too old for mums, but you're not quite grandma. So it's a really odd and frightening stage. And getting older in this business is weird. But I have been asked to go into Cabaret in London to play Fräulein Schneider, which is the heart of it. It's the love story of it, and it's beautiful. It's not like the film, like it's very different in the show. And that was weird. I went into the meeting with Rebecca Frecknell, and I was so nervous because I very rarely have to go in to meet people. It's sort of offered. I'm very lucky. It's offered. And I said to her, I said, I am such a huge fan of yours. I said, I saw the show, I've seen your play, one of her plays, and I said, you are so clever. She's very young, so clever. I'm such a fan. She said, well, she said, I'm such a fan of yours. And I sort of felt my shoulders go down. And then we were chatting. I said, how did you get into directing? Because she's so good at it. She said, well, she said, I wanted to be you. She said, you're the reason I got into musical theatre. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, I got into musical theatre, realized that I was good at all three, but not great. So she took herself off to a drama college and directed a play and suddenly had that moment of, oh, this is what I love and this is what I'm good at. But and so and apparently after seeing me, she didn't see anybody else for the role. And so it was this wonderful moment of, oh my God, I'm terrified. I've got to go and, sing and do auditions are horrible. And immediately, it wouldn't even occur to me that a director would be a fan or that I had encouraged, that I'd been the reason somebody had come into the business. It never occurs to me that stuff.
Mhm.
But we all affect people's lives. We just don't know how. And I suppose that's the good thing. It's why I love the film It's a Wonderful Life, not just because it's the most wonderful Christmas thing, but it's that if you hadn't have existed, how would that have affected other people's lives? When you've been there for somebody or not known that, th this boy wrote to me once, and I know this is, it's, it's one thing, but it's stayed with me. Um, this boy wrote to me and said his brother was in a coma, and he was a big fan of mine, and they played my album over and over and over again, and he came out of the coma to my album. I'm sure I didn't bring him out of the coma, but this is how the boy said, and you think that's that's the good stuff.
Mm.
That's the good stuff, not the big I am. It's, oh my goodness, these small moments.
Yeah, it's good. When I think back on it, I wouldn't say that you're not the reason they come out of a coma. I've seen so many miraculous things happened because there was a moment of connection that reactivated the brain to say, I want that.
But
That's so,
you are affecting people's lives. You are changing people's lives by doing this Born Superhuman, number one. But before that, you have changed my life immeasurably. And that is something that is deeply precious to me. You will never know what it has meant to be loved by you. So, you know, remember all those things and how many people's lives you've touched.
no, I appreciate it. It's like going back to what you were saying, we don't know the smallest things that make the biggest difference. And the impact, both positive and negative.
Yeah.
I've seen,
Yes.
I've seen it. David Beckham was a fantastic example of what you were talking about looking after when he went to the LA Galaxy. If someone said, I want you to wear our watch, we'll sponsor, say, absolutely, as long as all my teammates get it. But some people would then turn around and criticize him, look at the superstar, the celebrities. He was never about himself. He's one of the nicest guys, just an incredible, kind character.
Did you see the documentary on him?
I've seen part of it.
Huge, huge respect. Because this is a man, who had effigies hung of him, when he, messed up in a football game. He was a pariah as far as people were concerned. He was done with, and he was punished by the public. He was punished by the football teams, and they wouldn't put him in the team in the Galaxies, I think. LA Galaxy. They made him just sit on the side and run up and down the pitch in on his own in rehearsals, in practice and that kind of thing. He did it. And he did it without getting shitty about anything. And he rose up again because he just zipped it and got on and was determined and showed everybody, that he was just going to get on. I had huge respect for him after that.
No, it is. It's incredible because he kept putting his attention on his intention. He never made it personal. He said, I'm
No.
just here to do the work. And it's one of the hardest things is when you're a celebrity, and this is a credit to you, Ruthie, as well. When the director says, I'm a huge fan of yours, it's not because you had one performance. It's the consistency year after year of doing the work, keeping the highest level of excellence. It's so hard to do, and very few people can do it. One of the things, and you mentioned your college as a fleeting, comment a couple of minutes ago, but you've now launched your own program to help those that have a dream of fulfilling their talent. Tell us about the university, your program, because it's unique and beautiful.
Yes, it's called RHCast, and it came out of COVID, and seeing how left to ourselves we were by the government, and how it isn't really considered a proper job still over here, and you're very lucky to be doing it, kind of thing. And as I said, yes, we are. But and I felt we had a round table with a load of students who were coming out of college, who'd just come out, and what did you get? What did you not get? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And we took all of that because for me, the business has changed exponentially. It's not the same business, not with social media, not with, everything being on tape. If somebody wants a long career in theatre, they have to learn a lot more than singing, dancing, and acting. It's if that's all you're going to get when you go to college, then you're going to be in trouble. So, as I said, we find a side hustle for them that they can do alongside it. They perform absolutely every term to an audience, albeit in Bury St Edmunds, which is sort of out the way a bit, but so that they have to be accountable to an audience. Uh, and drama is at the heart of it all. And we only take 25 students because these colleges now are taking 150, 200 per year, and people get lost. And we have people in the business who teach, and also every single term there are 5 masterclasses, and we've had people like Claude Michel Schoenberg. I've just gone into my little black book, and are getting the people who can really give them the truth and really give them what they need. Um, and I find it extraordinary watching how they blossom. Some of them, a couple of them, will probably not make it. Um, and that's hard to watch as well. You can see the ones who are absolutely, going for it and sucking the marrow out of every moment. And there's a couple who are just a bit, whatever, and they won't make it. They don't realize. And
Isn't that the beauty though, Ruthie? You get what you put in. See, I've
yeah,
seen incredibly talented people go nowhere. And I've seen people that you say they'll never make it because of you think their talent or whether and they blossom and shine. It really does come down to the individual. But if you're giving them the tools to tap into, it really does come down to them at the end of the day, no matter what you give them.
yeah. Nothing, nothing gets, you don't get anything that you don't work for. You might have some luck along the way, and you might bump into something along the way, but it takes hard work. And you've got to be prepared to keep getting in the game and getting in the game and getting in the game. And how, you know, it's not about, it's wonderful to have competition. Because when I was in Chicago and I had Uta Lemper playing opposite me, and anywhere in actual fact, of the many times that I've done it, those two roles are very competitive. You're and having Uta, who was, you either liked her or you didn't. She had a particular style about her, but she was a star. And I had competition every single night on that stage. And I didn't realize until she left what it was that was so, I could see her talent, but I clocked it when the next person came in and I had no competition. I
Mm.
knew that that person, I didn't have to work very hard to be seen. And I suddenly realized that, and it was like, God, that is, it's so wonderful to have somebody on stage with you who makes you raise your game. And then I had to say to myself, no, what you need to do now that Uta has left is you've got to make sure that that person raises their game and, it competes with you. And so I chatted with them about it. Not saying you're crap because she wasn't. She was wonderful, but just didn't have that star quality.
Whole other level. I was fortunate enough to work with Shirley MacLaine for a while.
Oh,
What
I
a
love her.
what a genius. I mean, one of the smartest women I've ever taken. What people don't know, she never took an acting class in her life. She was actually a ballet dancer and she got to be an understudy of the lead dancer, the prima ballerina on stage who was sick the night that Alfred Hitchcock came in. And she had no rehearsals. And they said,
Wow.
who can do it? She goes, I've watched every night on the side. She'd never go away from being in the wings and watch because I can replicate it. And Alfred Hitchcock fell in love with her. And 3 weeks later, she was in Los Angeles, 3 movie contract. I got some incredible stories about her. We'll share this off screen and stuff. She's incredible. But look at what happens when you do the work, when you challenge yourself to be the best. And that's one of the things, again, you recognizing that the challenge brings out the best, not puts you under the cosh.
Absolutely. And you've got to say to people also, you never know who's in the audience. You don't know who's watching. And I have a negative example of that. I was in Chicago and I was messing around in a show. And the resident director came back and he said, I had 4 friends in today. He said, and I just want to tell you that they were big fans of yours and they watched you messing around. And that really put them off. And that was a huge example to me of um, how dare we mess around when, number one, they've paid good money, and number two, it took them out of the piece. And I've since seen that going on stage, and it really annoys me. So, you learn a lesson.
How do you handle that when you see it going on?
Um, if I'm in the audience, what can I do? Um, but I have phoned up a company manager before and just said, I understand that the cast is leaving soon, in a couple of weeks, and that they're probably, past it, but we're still paying money for a ticket, and just let them know that they can be seen.
What about if you're on stage? Or people just not even dare do that with Ruthie knowing that she's going to see?
Um, oh, that's an interesting one. I haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe they don't do it around me. I mean, I am the first person to go if something is really funny on a stage. It is so hard. But if the audience know about it, then it's kind of okay. They're in on it. If they're not, you have got to find a way to dig the nails in, or, if something happens that, makes you laugh or makes you want to laugh, you've just got to find a way. And there's one little saying that I say to myself in certain situations, which is, it's not appropriate. And I say it about laughing and about crying in various different situations. On stage, it's not appropriate um, for laughing. And if I am in an emotional state and I think I'm going to cry, uh, for whatever reason, in my life, I've learnt this for about 10 years. If you just say to yourself, that's not appropriate in your mind, the tears go back. It's like it just stops. If you're in trouble for something, or you're just about to let somebody understand that they've hurt you and you don't want them to, let's just say that's not appropriate anyway.
Have you ever had anything happen that you, or what is the biggest thing, might be a better way to say it, because I have this experience for sure. Have you ever had something happen that you look at and say, I wish I could go back and do it different? What is the biggest thing in your career or in life that you turn around and say, I wish I could do it again?
Well, there's two. Number one, it's the prose performance of Chicago, because I decided that I felt like I was doing too much. So I decided to literally just stand there and say the lines, and it was in front of a whole load of pros. I don't know what possessed me. And the director came up afterwards and said, "What the hell are you doing? Who are you taking notes from?" Um, but the other thing I'm very conflicted about, because when I was in America, I got offered a TV series, and I didn't want anything more than a baby. And so I walked away from it. And my agent showed up at the airport to try and stop me getting on the plane. This is a huge deal, all of that. And I said, I want to go home and have babies. And part of me feels quite sad about that, because I don't know where my life would have taken me. But the other part of it is my children came out of it. You know, Regardless of the disappointment in the man and the marriage, I wouldn't be without them for love nor money. So it's really, and I might not. It's that sliding doors moment. I might not have had children, or I might have had children later. I might have met somebody who I am still still be married to in America. Um, but also it might have gone tits up, and I wouldn't have those two girls that, are my world. I don't know. I've felt particularly sad about that recently. Yeah. I don't know what I'd love to be able to see into a crystal ball and see what would have happened.
I've been fortunate enough to shoot, a bunch of movies and work in the movie industry and TV, but nothing ever came close to live theatre and specifically musical theatre. I did some straight plays, but there's something about music. With where you are now, and congratulations, I feel like it's a world premiere to announce your new job, but it won't come out until after the official announcement. Um, would you want to go into TV and movies now more than going back on stage?
My first love is stage, without a doubt. Uh, I've only done one movie, um, and TV is so quick. The kind of TV that I've done is so quick. And you've got a couple of takes. I was a recurring character in Coronation Street. I've done lots of bits and pieces of television, and but there's it's all you've got time to do is learn it the night before and get on there and say it as best you can, because you're getting, pages, the night before sometimes, and I love that A to Z of I love telling a story. And of course, television is jumping in and out of certain things. And I do enjoy it because I enjoy being with the company, but there's nothing like. And I've done plays, and they're not the same, because you have to find that energy to come on with. We're so lucky in musical theatre. We've got a whole I don't mean prologue, what do I mean? They play a load of music before even the first scene. So you're in the mood, and then you've got these wonderful shots of energy because you've got the music again. It's the best.
One of my favorite things was when you're backstage waiting for the show to start and the music starts and the audience start cheering straight away. It's like it's
Yeah.
got them going. It's so exciting to do. And I can't wait to come and see you in your new show. It's going to be really great to see you again back. It's been a long time. When it comes to any show that you haven't done, Is there one role that you wish you had of? We're talking about stage.
Um, I'll tell you what I would love to do is I would love to do Sweeney Todd. I'd love to do Mrs. Lovett. There are certain roles that I've played a lot of tragic roles, which is interesting because I was always the comedian at college. I'm always the one who makes people laugh in a company. So it's really strange that I've had very few comedy parts, but and those gypsies and Hello Dolly and those sort of things. I desperately wanted to be Mary Poppins, and it came down to between myself and another girl who they went younger. I was 36 at the time, she was 22. And I remember being devastated over that because I'd grown up with a film and I wanted to be Mary Poppins. And instead, I had Dolly, my daughter, and I wouldn't have her if I'd have done Mary Poppins. Can't even compare.
Everything's a gift. I got to ask you this. In what I'm doing now with Born Superhuman and all this stuff, I look at people that inspire me. And I will say Arlene Phillips is one of the people that's an absolute brilliant lady. I mean, she was around leading productions before the women's movement came in. But not only is that, as she continued to drive, and what, she's in her 80s now and
Yeah.
still changing the world. Who is your inspiration to not just keep going? Because I think that's an inner fire, right? There's something that we still love. But do you have an inspiration?
I have a few. Um, I think people like Judi Dench, um, Meryl Streep, they've changed the landscape for women, for older women. Um, I think that everybody has their timing. And sometimes it's like Jessica Tandy, who got an Oscar at the age of 86 or something for driving Miss Daisy. She'd been in films for years and on stage and all of that. And 86, like the woman in Titanic, who played the older woman, she got an Oscar at that age. We all have our timing. But I, what was the question again?
Who's an inspiration for
Oh,
you now?
inspiration, yeah. Um, Always been people, Julie Andrews, people like that. Um, oh my goodness. Emily Blunt, I loved. I love these people who just, they're good people. And that because I don't think people stay at the top for that long without being decent people.
Mm.
I think that, and what I have found is the ones who stamp their feet and are, badly behaved are usually the people who haven't quite made it. And that's why they're angry. And that's why they're stamping their feet. And I just think that these women have huge grace.
Got to ask you this question. I got so many. I got like a million questions. We have to come back and do a part two, three, four, and five. But Celine Dion,
Yes.
incredible voice.
Yeah.
Did you see her performance at the Olympics?
No, I didn't.
Okay, for me, it was the greatest performance of the Olympics. Better than
Really?
athlete, incredible, because here's a lady who, for me, one of the greatest voices. And going, I don't know if you've seen her documentary either of
No, I haven't. I mean, I think her voice is, well, it's incredible.
just brilliant.
She is incredible.
So I don't know if you know that she was unable to sing again, and she
Yeah.
voice and everything like that. And then I saw her performance at the Olympics standing on the Eiffel Tower and singing. Incredible. How would it be for you? And it's hard to even imagine. Maybe it's a silly question, but there are no silly questions, I guess. To not be able to sing again. You said you lost your voice when Noel passed.
For 10 years. It
How?
took 10 years for me to go and rehab it and get it back to where I was enjoying singing. But how would it feel? Um,
Could you imagine it? Because you can't know actually. Now I ask the question. It sounds silly when I say it. How can you? Could you imagine what that would be like?
no, because it is my way of communicating. And it, at the time when I went through that and I wasn't enjoying singing and I couldn't hear my voice as I knew it, um, I didn't know who I was. It I didn't know what my value was because without being able to sing, what did I have? Who was I? Um, so that was another learning. Um, I would be devastated, devastated if something happened and I couldn't do this for a living.
So then, if you, this is, have you ever seen the video of the lady in the wheelchair that has Alzheimer's? And
Yeah.
she was a ballet dancer, and they put on the
Yes. And she knows every step.
incredible, right? Incredible. If you could only sing one song, it was the last song you'd ever sing, what would you choose?
I think I would choose the Lord's Prayer from African Sanctus. It's one of the most beautiful things. And I danced to it when I was in school in a competition. We did a trio, me and a couple of other girls, and it's never left my soul. I still find it extraordinary. Um, so yeah, I would sing that because that reminds me so much of the good part of my childhood.
Beautiful. Have you recorded it and released it?
No, I
Because
haven't done an album in years and years and years because quite simply because it costs so much money to do an album. And because I've been a single mum with no help, um, I've just been dealing with my two children and working to provide for them and working to put them through school. And now I'm working to help them get through uni. Um, so I can't remember the last holiday I had, that kind of thing, because it doesn't uh, because I haven't got any spare money. When you've got two kids and you've not got help and not had help financially from who you should, um, you're just on your own doing it. So yeah, and I know I should, um, but it's a large amount of money that I can't justify at the moment. You know,
that's
I don't know.
interesting. Yeah, people think you just make albums. What is the cost of an album? I have no idea.
Oh, it depends how you what you do, whether you do a lot of it electronically or I mean, if you have an orchestra, that's ridiculous. So it can cost anything from 12 grand to 50 grand, just to record. I'm sure it can cost a lot more, but musical theatre you can get away with a lot less. And I know people who, put out albums all the time, and I asked somebody the other day if lady I know, I said, "Oh, could you put me in contact?" Because I thought the record companies, I thought they used to do what they did, which was you get a record, they'd pay for it and then residuals. And I spoke to these two companies and they were like, "Oh, no, no, you pay us to make your album. They're a label, but you pay them." And it's kind of like, okay, all right. That I'll put that off for a bit because it will be 40 years next year that that I've been performing. And I know I ought to mark it somehow, but I don't know. Don't know how.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
sure it
I'm
will.
sure. I'm
Things
sure.
always come there.
Yeah. Do.
What was the name of the young girl that was the ballet dancer? Do you remember the one that inspired you in the playground?
Belinda Lack.
Did you she ever know the impact she had? Have you stayed in contact with her? Does she even
She did because she went to my secondary school as well. We went to the same secondary school. She gave it up. I carried on. So she inspired me and then she gave it up.
did she ever
Um,
come and see you perform? Have you met her since?
no, no, I've lost touch with because I moved from Bromley, where I was brought up to, Suffolk, but at 16, of course, I went away to college. I've never been back, so it just wasn't one of those things. Yeah, never kept in contact.
Another example of someone like you talked about earlier, that you inspire somebody or you have an impact, but they may never know.
Well, my dance teacher at school did. Mrs. Tapp, her name was. Can you believe it? Um, and she was so inspiring to me. And she had a sixth sense because I was always goofing around. I was always getting into trouble at school because played the class clown and, all of that. Um, and I used to go to dance club in the lunchtime. And that woman had a sixth sense. She would know when I was about to get into trouble. And she would be coming round the corner. She'd say, "Ruthie, can you carry these books for me, please?" Or something like that. And I went back to school years later and I walked into the staff room and they said, "Oh, here she is, naughty Ruthie Henshall, cheeky Ruthie Henshall." There was all that sort of thing. And you still feel like a student. And I went into the hall and Mrs. Tapp was there. And I don't know why, I just burst into tears. And I said, "Was I that bad?" She said, "No, Ruthie, you were just in pain." And she'd got it. And that's why she'd, just helped me and pushed me and nurtured me. And she was one of the ones who, I will always remember. And incredible woman, but she just saw behind the behavior.
If the pain you had created this incredible ability to share emotion that touches people on stage, are you still in pain now?
Oh, it's a, yes. Uh, I have more tools now. Um, but I still do have my pain, not in the same way as it was. Um, I think it's been slightly difficult because my girls have gone off to uni and suddenly I am completely on my own. And it's dealing with loneliness because I've been single for 15 years. And it's dealing with that loneliness. I would like to think that I would meet somebody to grow old with and have somebody to go places with, have conversations with. simple things, but I also think I've been a bit, I've got a bent radar and I don't think I pick very well. Um, I just don't think I do. And I meet so few people, Dan. It's just incredible how few people I've met because there's not many men in musical theatre, and the ones that the good ones are all married. They've- and it's a very there's so many wonderful gay people in that doesn't it's slim pickings. And I live in the middle of nowhere. And so when I'm not performing, I'm not meeting, I'm not getting out. So yeah, I don't know what and where my life is going, but honestly, if I look back at my life, I have no regrets,
Mm.
as in, I think I've had a really good life so far. I've met incredible people. I've been in incredible shows. I've had children and brought them up and have a wonderful relationship with them. I've been a very lucky girl, a very, very lucky girl in this life. I haven't had to struggle. I've struggled emotionally, but I haven't had to struggle in many other ways. That's a privilege.
I love your attitude because there's a saying that I use in Born Superhuman, why be the victim when you can be the hero? And there's so many people out there that don't see the positive because we all suffer in different ways, but it depends what we focus on. But do you think people are intimidated by Ruthie Henshall?
Yes, I do, and I don't know why. Um, and I think that I come across as a very strong woman, but yes, that is a part of me, but I'm also very vulnerable. And I think that that's always been a problem with men as well, there's only a few who can cope with a strong woman and can come back, and are strong too. I mean, I decided when my kids went to uni, they said, "Mum, you have got to start dating." So I went on an app, and I can't tell you how disappointed I am in men. I'm sorry, this is a gross generalization because there are wonderful men like you, Dan, out there. Um, but the ones who go on apps, they're looking, a lot of them, for a hookup. And they just ghost you as well. They just ghost you in the middle of a conversation. And so I just came off it because I don't like that environment. Um, yeah, it's an odd one, and I suppose the only thing I've got a good life, nothing to complain about, and I'm not a victim.
Mm.
Uh, I've made a lot of choices in my life, and I've never sat back and just watched and been a bystander. I can't.
So then what is the ideal guy for you then? Like, I feel like this is not a dating app, just so you know, Ruthie, so don't worry.
Oh, shame.
But what is the ideal guy that if you sat down, because when we're younger, we have this vision, but we're also very immature in who we are and what's really important in a relationship. And then not only who's the ideal guy, but how would they approach you? Because if I didn't know you as my dear friend and someone that I knew, of course, I would be intimidated to come up and say hi. How do you break down that? But who's the ideal guy?
I had the ideal guy at 26. He was absolutely wonderful. And I mucked it up. And I went off to America and, you know, that's the life I wanted. And I think I've been looking for him for years. Um, Funny, uh, so interested in, life. J Loved learning things. A good, really good listener, a really good conversationalist. Um, I think that that's my tick list, and somebody who's emotionally intelligent. You know, that's yeah. I think that, and that's one of my sadnesses. I think it had to happen, but I never ever properly got over him. And I still can't talk about him with very well without getting tearful because he was such a kind, lovely, wonderful man. And I just wish I'd met him later in life because I wasn't ready for him.
That's beautiful though, because when you know what you connect with and you know what you want, it means it's out there. I think
Yeah.
people have a fantasy of the person that would fit them. But I also think sometimes being on your own for a while, you learn more about yourself and then you become available for the right person at the right time.
Well, my uh, best mates in who live in America, they keep saying to me, Ruthie, you got to put your light on. Your light's not on. They're talking about that I'm not giving off, that I'm available, that I want to have a relationship. I think also I'm scared. I find it doesn't occur to me that somebody would find me attractive. I, f- yeah, I find that part of it really hard to think why somebody would choose me. So I think that's been part of my problem as I've got older, because you do feel a bit more invisible as you get older. I seem to have a lot of confidence when I was younger, but I think after 15 years on your own, you sort of think, is there something wrong with me? You know?
I look at it and say, look at what you've gone through in the last lot of years. Everything from your mum, your sister, your career, your daughters. I think listening into what you're saying, there's been priorities that I think
Yeah.
sometimes get lost. And then there's the regret on that side. I should have put more time into my daughters, because when those are gone, you can never get them back again. Obviously, you've got this new show coming up, which is brilliant because I know that's if I use the word happy place, I you can tell me if I'm wrong. But it's where you get to express yourself. What else is there for you? What goals do you have or plans? Or I know Shirley MacLaine, one of her goals when we were talking is she wants to win an Oscar in her 90s. That's what she would like to do, right? So she's still driven to want to perform. What about you? What's ahead for you?
Um, I would like to do more new shows. Um, Written, newly written shows. I would like to do film. you know, but I think that's past now because I think it's a young person's game. I do. And I'm known for musical theatre, so and that's because I'm good at it. And there are people who are really good at movies and really good at television, so and they're better than me at it all. They can cry on cue. I don't know I could. Um, yeah, I, s- I'd still like to be doing this in, perhaps another Olivier, if Shirley's going to get an Oscar, I'd like an Olivier.
And I'm sure you can get it without a doubt. It's again when you it's interesting to listen to you, Ruth, because again, so knowing you, Ruthie, and you've always been so driven and dynamic, I have no doubts that if you committed to movies, you'd be brilliant doing it. I have no doubt of that at all because you've always adapted and adjusted relative to the challenge you've been given, especially when it comes to performing. And the greatest actors are not the ones that cry on cue. I've seen people that do that. They just spend all their time. There's no emotion behind it. They can just do it. In fact, I went and saw Les Miserables that you starred in. I didn't see your performance back in London, but it was, I believe Marius started crying just on cue. And I'm sitting in the front row watching, and it killed the show for me. As soon as he just, because it wasn't emotionally connected, it destroyed it. It's like I meant to cry now, I'll cry, and it took me completely out of it. But
It's much more moving to see somebody trying not to cry.
yeah. And if they come out at that, but the tears come out at that point, it's because they can't stop them. But the audience is always better crying for you
Yeah.
than you
Yeah.
crying for them. But there's a question I'd love to ask, and I've asked a few. You have your three favorite characters that you've played on stage all having dinner together. Who would those three characters be, and how would that dinner go?
It would be Polly Baker from Crazy for You. It would be Roxy Hart from Chicago, and it would be Fontaine. And how would it go? Well, I suppose well, there'd be a big old sing along, wouldn't there?
Different eras, different generations. It'd be interesting to see how the music conductor would handle that one.
Yeah, and I think Roxy would be able to tell Fontaine what she needs to, you know, how she can, earn money for her child.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant.
Polly Baker would get them all dancing in the theatre. So there you go.
Okay, from that, each time you go on stage, do you have a ritual that you go through, or was there something specific for each character that had you there, or were you so prepared that you just were able to step on?
I don't like rehearsals at all because I don't like that feeling of not quite knowing the lines. They're not in you yet. The steps, they're not in your body yet. My happy place is performing. Um, and uh, I don't have particular rituals, definitely not. Because the music starts and that's when I'm not one of these people who gets into character beforehand or anything like that. The music starts and then I'm on. But I do have when I leave a show, I always wait until everybody's almost out of the theatre and that they've got the ghost light on. And I always go onto the stage and say thank you for having me to the theatre and say thank you for, to all the people who might have performed there, who some of their fairy dust might have, you know. sprinkled on me. Um, yeah, I just feel that because the theatre is my church, and so it's where I feel, you know, the God of your understanding. I'm not really sure I understand what it is, but um, and so yeah, I always want to say thank you.
That's beautiful. I think again, that's personal to you because it was normally, could I get out of the theater as quick as we can? Right? A lot of people would like makeup's not even fully off. It's just there. I'm going out. I've got to get out of here. Or they want to get down to the fans, the ones that are waiting outside and stuff. So that's beautiful. Did you ever have a conflict though with a director that turned around and they wanted you to play a character a certain way and and you had to give in a little bit, or have you always had that respect from people they trusted you and it was just a small.
Yeah. I like working with directors because it's their vision. I've never really, I can't say that I have clashed with anyone. I've only done one show where I had no respect for the resident director. And so when they came with notes, I would take them, but think that's that's wrong. Um, and but it's a collaboration, and the director is the captain of the ship. And I love somebody saying, try this, try that, but I'm also very good at saying that just doesn't feel right.
There's so many things. I wrote so many questions down that I wanted to ask you, and yet I now feel those questions are almost irrelevant because you've been so raw and so open and sharing who you are. That's way more powerful than the actress, Ruthie. What you reveal, I believe, when you act is just another expression of you. It's another part. You're so multi-dimensional, multifaceted in your emotional ability to tap in and tell the truth in a story. Is there anything that you're still discovering about yourself now that would lead to an even more fulfillment stage in life? Or do you feel like you've got so much accessibility, you've got so many tools now that it's more just an expression of who you are?
Yeah, I think that the latter. I think that I'm very self-contained. I'm very independent. I'm sometimes I would love someone to look after me, but that hasn't been my path. Um, and nobody else can look after you. You've got to look after yourself. But yeah, I think I'm excited to see where life takes me now. Now that my job as, you know, as a mother is, they don't need me as much. They just don't. And so that's exciting. What's what's this next chapter going to look like? Where am I going to be living? Will I always live in this little thatched cottage in the country, or will I move and go back to a little bit closer to London because that's where my community is? Those sort of things are going through my mind now. So I don't know, Dan. I don't know, but there's a new chapter coming.
I love that because so many people get to a point and they just settle and they think that's it. And if there's
Mm.
one thing I know about you, you will keep driving to new areas of interest with a passion. And it's the passion, the curiosity that unleashed, you're unstoppable. If there's one thing you could share as we close that you would love the world to know about you to help themselves, what would that be?
Oh, I think definitely, and I am nicking this from Tom Hanks. Be kind, be kind, be kind. First and foremost to yourself. Learn how to be kind to yourself because we are our worst critics and it's cruel what we can do to ourselves. Got to learn to forgive yourself. Got to learn to see the things you feel you've done wrong as lessons and things to be learned from. Um, you know, do one lovely thing for yourself when you're down. Do one lovely thing for yourself, nurturing thing for yourself every day. Whether that's lighting a candle, as simple as, something that makes you feel good. Um, we have to learn that. I mean, you know, I'm not of any uh, denomination, sect, religion, but you know, I think Jesus was one of the most loving people that ever walked this earth, and I do believe he walked this earth. Um, and he says, uh, love your neighbor as you love yourself. He doesn't just say love your neighbor. And so that would be my thing is learning first and foremost to not be quite so hard on yourself.
Amazing.
Learn to forgive.
Thank you. And you're an incredible lady. I can't wait to see the next chapter of your life. I can't wait to see your next performance on stage. I will be there. Maybe
I
not with the binoculars because my mum won't let me borrow them, but I won't need them. And just to hear your voice, thank you for all you've gifted to millions and millions and millions of people. Thank you for being you.
thank you.